And yeah, it's digital, meaning that instead of like these triggers here, where it can detect how far in you're pushing the triggers until you can get down to the bottom. So you can either give it a soft push or a long hard push, and it'll tell the difference. This Z button right here is digital, meaning it's on or off. You know what I mean? I'm just realizing how dumb of an observation that was, because all the shoulder bumpers are digital. But make them analog. Someone please make them analog. That would be awesome. And yeah, this controller should have had 2 bumpers to fit with the 2 triggers. You know what I mean? And another thing, this goes for any controller that does this, but I don't like having the sticks. Maybe it's because I grew up playing PlayStation, but I don't like having the sticks at an angle like this, and then the D-pad and the buttons at an angle like this. I like having the sticks side by side on the below, and then the up on top is the D-pad and the buttons. You know what I mean? And also there's a start button, but there's no select button. But I don't give a shit, because no game ever actually freaking uses the select button, except like on the NES, really. At least from the ones I played. But yeah, that's my review of the controller right now. And here's to show you what the memory card looks like. It's just like a little card that you just stick right in here. That's how you save your games. Now I want to talk to you about, I've already told you guys about some of the games that I know and some of the games that I like to play. But now I'm going to tell you about some of the games that I actually own myself. And I'll explain that in a little bit. This right here is Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. I've always been, again, a big fighting game fan. I got Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Tekken, Injustice, and Super Smash Bros. Those are all favorite series of mine. I like playing fighting games. And this right here is no exception. Only, for some reason in this game, I feel like they toned down the blood and gore a little bit, and I can never figure out how to pull off fatalities. Not just in this game, but in any Mortal Kombat game. But yeah, I'm sure the PS2 or original Xbox version of this is better, but I found this at the thrift store for, I think it was $2 a few years ago, and I decided to just pick it up. It didn't actually have the cover in the case, so I actually had to print this cover myself for my computer, if you couldn't tell. Looks good, doesn't it? Good cover printing work. And then I found this at a book off at Pearl Ridge Mall on Oahu, about maybe last year, not last year, 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago. I found this. This was $5 at Book Off at Pearl Ridge. I was on a trip off island to Oahu, and I went to Book Off at Pearl Ridge, and I picked this. I was looking for games, and this is the only game that they had for the GameCube that looked good. So yeah, I picked this thing up right here, and this is a fun game. But one thing about the Lego games that I don't like is that they're pretty much just all the same. You just go around with whatever weapon you have, just whack shit around, and then all the Lego pieces break, and then you collect them. That's basically the gist of almost every Lego game out there. They're still fun to play, it's just, it can get repetitive. And then here's a couple of disc-only games I found last month at the thrift store that were each $1. I've got Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, based on the Nickelodeon movie, which spawned the TV series. I like the movie and I like the TV series. At Nickelodeon games, unlike most licensed games, some of them are pretty good, so I thought maybe I would pick this up to see if it was as good as something like SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom would have been. It wasn't, but I didn't really play much of it, but I can't really figure out what I'm supposed to do in it. And then Midway Arcade Treasures. I was expecting that this would have a bunch of classic arcade games that I knew, and it would have some sort of like Mortal Kombat games in here, because that's like Midway's most famous franchise. Nope, there's no Mortal Kombat games in here, and I was actually amazed at how much of Midway's games, arcade games, I really don't know about. The one that I kind of remember is the one where you're like, there's this ball, and it's going down all these little slopes with the edges that you can fall off, and you have to like tilt the ball around. I can't remember what it's called, but that was a pretty fun game. That's pretty much the only thing I ever played with this. And now for my own experiences with the GameCube. During the summer of I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory first. When I was a kid, I got a Nintendo Wii for Christmas in 2010. When I was 8 years old, I was in the 3rd grade, and that was the first home console that I ever played myself. It wasn't the first game system I ever played, and it wasn't the first home console that I ever had owned, or at least had in my house. But it was the first home console that I ever did play. It was the Wii. And I had a bunch of Wii games that I liked playing, but I learned very quickly that the Wii was capable of playing Nintendo GameCube games. I didn't know what the Nintendo GameCube or any of what Nintendo's past systems were. That's why I ended up learning about them over time because I was curious. But that the Wii could play Nintendo GameCube games. Apparently, all I knew was that it could play them and that you needed the controller and you needed the memory card to save games. And you also had to, actually have GameCube games to play. I always kind of wanted to check some of those GameCube games out, but because I had the Wii. But the thing was that I did not have a GameCube before, so I didn't have any GameCube games. There are no stores in my area other than the thrift store and garage sales, if you really count that sell video games. You have to go into the city or into like a larger town to buy games where I live. And in order to play the GameCube games, unlike the DS, which lets you play Game Boy Advance games right out of the box, which made it a lot easier, the Wii required that you buy a GameCube controller and memory card. So I never really bothered to play GameCube games as a kid, even though I always wanted to. And fast forward many years later into the summer of 2017, when I was 15 years old, about to be a sophomore in high school. I found this at the thrift store. This is one of the first things I ever got from the thrift store when I learned that they existed. Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. I liked this game, but I wanted to play it. I wanted to play it because I really enjoyed playing Mortal Kombat on other consoles. So at first I was going to play it on my Wii by ordering a GameCube controller and memory card. Just this. But as I was browsing Amazon, I found out that it would have been basically cheaper and a better deal to just buy the whole console, which I ended up doing, because if I ever get a Game Boy player, which I'll plug in down here, then I'll get to use that, because I have an actual GameCube, because Game Boy players don't work on the Wii. So I got it. I got Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. I ended up picking up the other games later. And that was my experience with the actual console. My experience with the actual games, though, is a different story, because I have my Wii, which is hooked up over there. You can't see it, but it's there. I had my Wii, and I had learned a long time ago how to put the homebrew channel on so I could run emulators for retro games, and I could run a backup loader for Wii and GameCube games, meaning I could play games without having to order the physical versions, which is good because I would have to order them online, and I didn't have a credit card at the time, and my mom was really stingy about letting me giving her money to borrow hers. So, which is understandable. So my only option I had basically at that point was to load a bunch of the ISOs onto a flash drive or SD card and play them off my Wii that way. And that's how I ended up playing Mario Sunshine and Mario Kart and Smash Brothers and Kirby Air Ride and all those games. I would love to own the physical versions of them, and now that I'm an adult with a job and a debit card making some money, I might actually be able to do that. Unfortunately, a lot of the GameCube's stuff right now is really expensive, like more expensive than it should be. Some of those new GameCube games go for higher prices than what new games on like the PS4 or Xbox One or PS5 or even the Nintendo Switch or Xbox Series X cost nowadays, which is unfortunate. Because I like to collect physical stuff. I have both a large game collection and even larger DVD collection. But as for the GameCube, I'm pretty much, aside from these, all I've got is pirated games. And one other story I want to tell you before I end this was that my cousin, when I was about 5-ish years old, maybe 4, maybe I was like 4, about to turn 5, But my cousin was at the hospital getting stomach surgery, and they had a GameCube hooked up for him with Mario Kart Double Dash, the purple one, and we ended up playing and doing a race together. And that was the first Mario game that I ever actually saw, and it was the first Nintendo console I ever actually played. Hey, the GameCube. And that was pretty much my only, but I never knew what the freaking thing was. I never knew what the actual name of the game we were playing, or I remembered it, but I didn't know what Mario was at the time. It wasn't until Christmas 2008, when I was 6 in the first grade, I got a Nintendo DS with New Super Mario Brothers. That was the first handheld I ever played, was the first video game I ever played, other than, after Double Dash. The first game I played that I ever owned, if that makes sense. And I loved it, and I learned about the Mario universe, and I later ended up getting Mario Kart for the DS, and I thought that's what I played with my cousin. But I never knew which Mario Kart game it was, nor did I remember what console it was until I learned about Mario Kart Double Dash and the GameCube and all that, and I was like, that's what I played. So yeah, I realized I should have told you that before I told you about at the beginning of the whole my experience story, but whatever, I just remembered that now, so I thought I'd share it with you. Anyway, so that's basically it for my thoughts on the GameCube, and what I know about it and all that. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're new. I might not post content every day, but I do have some stuff to talk about here and there. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all later.